Hello, today we're looking at a painting by Spanish artist Diego Velázquez, The Surrender of Breda, completed sometime between 1634 and 1635. It is located currently in Museo del Prado in Madrid, Spain. This painting commemorates the capture of the city of Breda during the 80 Years' War, a conflict between Spain, which controlled the Low Countries, and the Dutch, who were fighting for political independence.
So we're looking at the surrender of Breda. And as far as formal elements go, it's a very triangular composition, very Baroque. They love the triangles. And it all kind of points towards the two main figures that we see, like right at the bottom of that triangle. And the whole rest of the piece is very earth toned. I would say it's slightly warm. There's no really well-defined space where natural light is coming through. There's minimal shadows. So your eye really is only focused on the two figures, who are very detailed. They have magnificent patterns and clothing, whereas everyone else is kind of plainly dressed, I would say. Another thing that points you to, like, here are the two people that you were supposed to be looking at right now. In the background, we have a lot of atmospheric perspective in use, where we see like the battle that's just occurred and the soldiers who a little cluster is holding up these lances up to the sky, very vertical, which kind of goes against the direction of the triangle, which is why it's nicknamed the lances, just because of that funny little detail behind them. And we also see the city of Breda, which helps us know where we are. And another, just a little side note, the surrender that we're seeing kind of fictitiously portrayed, I would say, has a lot of dignified pride. It's not violent, it's very peaceful surrender of power.
The overall subject matter of the surrender at Breda was about the aftermath of the war against the Spanish soldiers and Dutch soldiers, which is why it was given that name. And it showcases how the Spanish soldiers were still ready to fight if the time came to it. This is shown by how the soldiers were depicted with their weapons in hand and large in numbers when compared to the Dutch soldiers, who were much younger and willing to keep the peace, as they did surrender to the Spanish ones. In a way, it showcases just how much more mature that the Spanish soldiers were when compared to the Dutch soldiers. And that can be seen with how the Dutch soldiers are low in numbers. They don't have their weapons out compared to the Spanish soldiers, who did have their weapons out and were ready to fight if it came to it. One of the things that comes to mind about just how different this piece was is just the exchange of the keys. The captain of the Spanish troops received the keys of the city from Justinus van Nassau, and because of that, it shows a respectful gesture that separates the surrender of Breda from other typical surrendering scenes that have been depicted in the past. And as you can see towards the background, you can see how there are noticeable smoke columns in the background, and it shows just the human encounter being emphasized in the foreground as the surrendering is going on at the same time.
All right, yeah, and getting into some social historical context for these figures that we're looking at. So the whole story behind this painting: Spanish King Philip IV commissioned the construction of a royal palace just outside of Madrid. The palace is called Buen Retiro. Somewhere between 1630 and 1635. And this painting, The Surrender of Breda, would decorate the Hall of Realms within that palace. And that room would function as a throne room, music and theatrical performances. But most importantly, emissaries and ambassadors would be received and entertained in this hall. And when visitors entered the room, they encountered very highly ornate space decorated with large paintings that celebrated the Spanish king's military victories. The painting then operates at multiple levels. It's, a rhetorical exaltation of Spanish national identity, a symbol of Philip IV and his army, and a tribute to Spinola, who's the general, the captain in the painting. And he was a personal friend of Velázquez, who had died a few years before the commissioning of this painting. Another angle here is that the Reformation and Counter-Reformation is still ongoing, so there's a religious aspect, and it was a big part of the 80 Years' War, which is what the painting is about. So there's an interesting historical aspect here about how, historically the Reformation in Spain did not go super well, and the Protestants found themselves in other countries like the Netherlands, Holland, whatever you want to call it. And this is an interesting change of pace for the Spanish Catholics. They're depicting themselves as being more humane, more tolerant of this new rising religion, or they at least want to appear that way. So it does function. It does function in that way to portray themselves for the emissaries and ambassadors who would be sitting in that hall ready to have their audience with King Philip.
For the power relations, Vasquez divides his painting into two halves, with the Dutch on the left and the Spanish on the right. The Spanish are depicted as a large, well-organized, seasoned group, while the Dutch appear disorganized, youthful, and in few number. The numerous spears create a sense that there are more Spanish troops than we can actually see, and because of their organized arrangement, they emphasize the military competence of the Spanish soldiers. In the center of the painting, you see the exchange of the keys. The captain of the Spanish troops receives the keys of the city from the Dutch commander. The Spanish captain has dismounted from his horse and has put a friendly hand on the shoulder of the Dutch commander, stopping him from kneeling. This gesture is a demonstration of magnanimity, which shows both military and moral superiority. This painting revolutionized the genre of military painting by emphasizing that to win with elegance and magnanimity is what defines a great leader.